So what you want to make sure you do when you're setting up your Google My Business profile, like I said, there's certain guidelines you need to follow. So if you ever look up Google My Business guidelines, what you're going to find is that you can have one Google My Business listing per location and per provider. And that's really important because if you have multiple clinics, you want to make sure that you have one for each of them because, like I mentioned previously, Google's really getting to the point now where everything as far as location and proximity is really important factor as far as when you're going to show up in specific types of search. So if you're, let's say, in Boulder, Colorado, and you really want to see patients from Denver, you're going to be at a disadvantage because you won't show up for Denver podiatrist, searches. The people that are actually in Denver are going to be the ones that show up the highest. If this person in Boulder had a satellite clinic within Denver, it would help that show up just because of the proximity thing. So making sure you have one Google My Business listing per location is really important. Like I mentioned previously, you also can have one per provider. Like I said, you want to make sure that this listing has photos of the provider. The photos are a really important component of all of this. But you don't want to have multiple, and you need to make sure that the things you name your business listings and your provider listings are also really important in that as well. So for example, if someone has 2 different clinic locations and 4 providers, you're looking at having maybe a maximum of 6 Google My Business listings. So it's really important to take ownership of those and set them up the right way. Like I mentioned previously, the main category is really, really important, and you want to use podiatrist for your main category. It's really an important component because that's what most of us do. So we want to make sure that we show up as high as we can in Google's rankings for that. But as much as it's important, the primary category is important. Do not neglect the secondary categories. So when you're on the Google My Business dashboard, you're going to see within the info section, you'll see the primary, but also the secondary ones. So if any of these secondary categories are relevant to you and your practice, make sure that you put them in there because it's going to help you show up for different terms. Obviously, like you might be a sports medicine foot and ankle provider, and that's totally fine based on Google's guidelines as far as sports medicine physician or sports medicine clinic. And there's no limit to how many you can put there. You just want to make sure that those are actually services that you or someone in your practice provides. Like I mentioned previously, you want to make sure that your photos are really, really on point. And what I mean by on point is that you want to make sure that number one, for example, your logo is put in here, a cover image that really relates to you and your practice is here, because what you'll find is that if you don't put in photos into Google My Business, you're going to find that it's going to send you a picture, an image of a parking lot or the outside of a building, and that's not going to be very attractive to most patients. It may not totally drive them away, but they're more likely to engage with a photo of a doctor treating a patient with a logo there that kind of builds trust. If you don't have a logo and you're showing a parking lot, it's not a good look. Along with other photos, you just want to make sure the other photos within your Google My Business profile, and you can have lots of other photos and videos in there. You just want to make sure that that's showing kind of your professionalism, you treating patients, you treating your ideal patients. Obviously, if it's a real patient, you want to make sure you have a waiver. But it's a great way to kind of show people what you do and the patients you treat. And they're more likely to potentially either visit your website or take action there on your Google My Business profile. Like I mentioned, this is what the Google My Business dashboard looks like. And the really important part is you need to fill out the info section. And this info section is kind of the third tab that's going to be on the left here of your Google My Business kind of dashboard. And like I said, it's got the name of your clinic, your hours, your name, your address, the days you're closed, the phone number, and then links to very specific pages on your website. And the more detailed you can make this, the more likely it'll drive potential appointments and help your patients get more information about you. So that's a really important to make sure that section, the info section, is really fully filled out. The next step after that, there's a section called services, and there's also a section called products. So obviously, if you're a podiatrist and you have specific services, whether you're more focused on diabetic foot care or sports medicine or plantar heel pain treatment or surgery, you can really fill in these things to help show people that are visiting your Google My Business profile the type of care you want to provide. Like I also mentioned, you can put products in there as well. So if you have some in-office dispensing of any DME, you can put it there and it'll display within your Google My Business listing. It kind of gives people a bigger view of kind of what all your clinic does there. The next step is basically there's a section of Google My Business called messages. And messages is one thing to be aware of, is that you're going to see when you're filling out your Google My Business profile that you're going to get to a point where it says it's 85% complete. And the reason why it's probably only 85% complete is that you didn't set up messages and you don't want to set up Google My Business messages. So do not turn them on. And the main reason why is that this form of messaging is not HIPAA compliant. So even if you're just kind of asking like general information from people that come to the site through this platform, there's a huge risk for a HIPAA violation or for people to share, personal medical information or personal health information there. So just don't turn on the messages and be okay with it being 85% complete, because that's just the way it is there with Google My Business. That's more for like a mom and pop, like a restaurant, or for a local business that doesn't have to be concerned with HIPAA compliance like we are in the healthcare industry. Another huge component to the Google My Business kind of dashboard is this area called Get More Reviews. And you should be able to see that kind of in the central console of your dashboard there within your Google My Business profile. Actually, kind of your dashboard there. And why it's important is that if you click on this, you'll get a link from Google that goes directly to your Google Reviews dashboard. So you can take this link, you can put it in emails, you can put it links on your website. It's just a very easy way to kind of generate more reviews, because what we're seeing is that more and more, whether the more reviews you have, kind of the more trust that potential patients have for you in your practice. So it's just a great way to get more reviews. And there's also a review section here on the side. And why that's important is that every review that comes in through Google will show up here in that Google Reviews area. So this is kind of an example of what it might look like for your practice. So, you're going to see these new reviews coming in, 5 stars with, Dr. So-and-so was great. And what I recommend that everyone does, whether they're positive or negative reviews, is that you respond to them because it shows that you're engaged. People that are looking for a potential podiatrist in your area, when they see a high number of reviews that are positive and they see a clinic who's engaging with their patients, that's a sign to them that that's the kind of place I want to go see. Obviously, from time to time, you might get a negative review. But if you're kind of reaching out either through Google My Business or through other ways of getting reviews, it's pretty easy to help those negative ones kind of go down the list over time. But those both positive and negative reviews should be responded to because it can be a huge thing for your practice to kind of differentiate yourself. Because if you see a practice that has 150 reviews and it's at like a 4.8 or a 5 versus a practice that has 6 reviews and 3.6 in a rating, it's pretty clear who the patient or prospective patient most likely will choose.